Hi, everybody.
Morning.
So we had Karen and Junior at City Hall.
Okay.
I got smiley faces from others, so I think we should get a couple more.
Smiley face sounds promising.
Yeah, you know.
I try not to smile too much unless there's a good reason. You guys know me. I'm pretty antisocial and generally morose.
And I don't think Ricardo has heard the story, or Bobby, or Amy. I mean, I don't know anyone, but I mean, I'll share it. So on Saturday, I did do a Spartan race. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Spartan, but I did do it. It was quite an accomplishment. It was a 5K, so pretty intensive, but I did survive. And I don't know if I'll take any questions if you guys want to know any more details about it, or
Deep. Yes.
I have questions.
Yeah.
What were the two most difficult parts?
The ones that I couldn't do.
Oh, okay, go on.
Yeah, so I couldn't climb a rope, and
Mhm.
I'm too short to swing on the rings. Oh, my reach was not, yeah.
You mean they don't have like a, that seems silly. Like I feel like you should be able to have a step up or something for the rings.
There were two extended step ups, and I didn't know there were parts that it was like, hey, this is for the men and this is for the women. But the 1 to 2 step ups were being taken, and I was already slowing my son down, so I couldn't wait any longer.
If I was your son, I would have just left you in the dust.
I'm glad you're not my son then.
Good call. It's a good call. Okay, what was the best part?
The best part, I mean, it really was a lot of fun. The best part was, I don't know if I could see Ricardo doing something like that. I mean, even in high school, it was hard for Ricardo to keep up with me in basketball and stuff, but
Wow. Welcome to
Ricardo
the
knows
housing
what I'm
committee
talking
meeting, everybody. Yeah. Okay.
I joke.
Yeah.
I pulled weeds this weekend and I'm still recovering.
Brandon, I'm very impressed. I know I chatted with you about this earlier, but I'm very impressed. It's I've done a lot of big races. I haven't done a Spartan, but I've done a lot of those, like, bite off more than you think you ought to chew. It's impressive. It takes a tremendous amount of effort and training and discipline.
And athletic ability.
Yep. So kudos to you, man.
I joke.
Karen and Junior, are you guys signing up for the next one with me?
I always tell somebody, if you see me running, you need to be running too, because there's something big and bad chasing. Otherwise, I don't run. I'm a fight, not a flight.
I respect that. Well, I think we ought to get started. If other folks are coming, they can catch up. But I want to be respectful of everybody's time and get us launched here. We've got a few things on our agenda. I'll share a PowerPoint in a second to keep us on track. But Brandon wanted to do a little bit of an intro today. We're going to give an update on our urban form work, which has begun due to this committee recommending it. Ricardo, not to put you on the spot, but I'll ask you to give your perspective on that as the committee member who is helping with that project. And then we will spend the bulk of our time today talking about a scope of work and next steps and timelines for what we think could be a real estate development master plan for the city of Boardman with a focus on how. That's our agenda for today. Does anybody have anything they want to make sure we add or questions about that before I turn it over to Brandon? No? Okay. Brandon, take us away.
Okay, so I'm gonna step out after this, but I wanted just to clarify and get some like just protocols or suggestions. So as a staff member, I will be attending meetings, and I've done that purposefully because I wanted the committee to be independent. Like you guys guide it, it's your, committee. However, if you would like a staff member to attend, if you would like someone from planning or another department, please feel free to ask. We are more than willing to do that. But I really do want it to come as an invitation, not that the city staff just feel that, hey, we can go and attend whatever we want. That's really not the case. So having said that, if you do want to have myself or Carla or anybody else attend, just ask, send me an email, go through Nathan, he'll get in contact with me.
Thanks,
Okay.
Brandon. Can I just say a quick moment about that?
Yeah.
One of the reasons we want to do that is because you're in like meeting 3 here. You're still just starting, and having the prioritization and the vision come from you is important. Staff is knowledge holders, they're experienced, and quite frankly, they would end up being the implementers, right? Along with any consultants that we bring on or hire, they have to do work. And eventually we have to check in with them on big important topics. But at the end of the day, this group needs to find its voice and needs to clearly identify what its priorities are for housing, and then go back to both your staff, but also your council. And we have council representation here with Karen, Richard, and Brenda. So we think that should be relatively seamless, but that's a good process to take, is that things get born here and then go through both staff and your council. That's the objective and what we're really hoping for. Does that ring true to you, Brandon?
Right. Yep. Absolutely.
Anybody else have any comments on that bit of business? Oh man. Okay, bye, Brandon. All right. Second thing for our agenda, which we'll try to keep it kind of brief, is an update on urban form. So as you guys remember, we had brought urban form to this group 2 months ago to say, hey, this is a tool that other cities across the state are using, 17 of them now, to be precise, mostly in Yamhill, Coos, and Polk counties. And we had heard you all say that one of your big objectives is helping to make the system. You didn't quite define what the system is, but you said make the system easier to navigate for people to plan and build housing. And so we came back with a tool that we have worked with before, a company called Urban Form that digitizes zoning codes and then makes it easy or easier to understand at a glance within seconds what you can and cannot do on any given parcel in Boardman. The problem that we're trying to solve here is that in order to figure out what you could or could not do on any piece of land in Boardman requires you to sometimes literally thumb through a lot of zoning code. And it's tricky if you're not a skilled architect or consultant to do that. And so every time you would then do an analysis of where you could build XYZ or what can I do on my land, you make mistakes. It takes a lot of time. And then because unless you're an expert at this sort of world, you then eat up a lot of staff time, which is limited in the city of Boardman. And then Carla or Stephanie spends between 2 to maybe 6 hours on any given parcel report that they would do in the city of Boardman. And so Carla came and said, hey, I actually think we have a funding source that is not the housing fund to start this work. What do you say? And so you guys seemed excited about that. And so we got started. We actually have begun. So Ricardo, I'm going to pause there. I can, of course, fill in gaps on timeline and stuff, but you are the representative to that project from this committee. I would appreciate it if you could maybe give some highlights about what you've learned already. I know you've only had like 1 or 2 meetings, but what you've learned already, what you're excited about, or what questions you might have, if that's okay.
No, yeah, no problem at all. So honestly, it did exactly what we were hoping that it would do. It just looks like a super user-friendly system. It gets you the information that you're looking for, gives you the source to verify, okay, takes you to the code, exactly whatever you click on hyperlinks. So I really liked how user-friendly it was. All the information, you can make a report, print it out, PDF full report that any contractor or developer would need. So I think it's really going to help staff. It's going to be a great tool. And I love that the city was able to, find a source of funding and that they can just take care of it. I do remember some of the projected dates. I wrote down November 5th projected launch date. So it really seems like this is just going to be something that's super quick and efficient. It was what we're looking for. So I just like it. It just seems like a no-brainer, to be honest.
A little note on timeline. November 5th is the big public launch, but by mid to late September, it'll be live in Boardman. It'll be up and running, and we'll introduce it back to this committee. And you will all be able to use it by the end of September. Because what will then be happening through the end of September and October is what we call quality assurance and quality control. So the tool's live. Everybody can click on all the parcels throughout Boardman. You can do searches. But part of your goal, and really it's not, you guys are secondary, frankly, to like Carla and Stephanie. We want Carla and Stephanie to go in and try to break it. We want them to say, this is missing, this isn't working, we need these 3 layers, this part's unclear. And that happens throughout October. And so we'll ask all of you to participate in that. Again, it'll be live, it'll be up and running. We're just not going to tell anybody that it's up and running except for you and key staff within the city. And then we keep broadening out. So if you think about it as like concentric circles or a bullseye, the first group of people that really play with it are the folks that touch your zoning code every single day. So it's your planners, it's folks in public works, it's GIS, it's Anderson Perry. And we have them troubleshoot everything really fast. And then the next concentric circle includes you, especially Karen, Brenda, Richard. As counselors, it'll be really important for you to take a deep look into that. Brandon, of course. And then the last concentric circle would be folks who deal with real estate development in your community. So it's probably BCDC, it's probably the port, it's some of your housing developers, it's certainly Good Shepherd at this point. But again, the point is that everybody comes in and provides feedback. Is this working for what you want it to do? We've now used this process 17 times before, and it works pretty well. But so you'll have something to start using and seeing as soon as the end of September. So they go pretty fast. They go pretty quick. And then we would target November 5 as our big public launch day. Because once it's up and running, it's free to anyone in your community to use. And as Ricardo, I really like what you said about user interface. It's meant to be as simple to use as like Google Maps. So if all of you have used Google Maps before, that's that. I want to also just give a moment because Amy, you've done this a billion times with me. Am I forgetting anything from this update?
I can't think of anything. Pretty thorough.
Okay. Ricardo, well, actually, any questions from the group, and then we'll move on to our big main agenda item, especially, or questions for Ricardo or for me? Okay. It's pretty exciting that you guys said, hey, we're curious about this. Carla found a funding source immediately. We brought them in, and we'll be essentially up and running by late September and done by November 5th. So kudos to you. It's always nice to have like a little, okay, we did a thing to point at real fast. Okay, so for the bulk of our meeting, I want to walk us through a PowerPoint that I put together, just to remind folks where we've come. And this is really all about this master planning that you folks have been curious about, and that we are recommending you put some real thought into. So the last time we were together, I showed you all of this. I'm not going to walk you through all this. This will be the third time that you've seen this, but I want to just remind everybody like what the problem is that you're trying to solve. You know, you're here because essentially Boardman creates almost, but not quite enough housing, and not really necessarily in the right price points. And seemingly very few people in your community are happy about the housing that has happened. Here's some key data points just as a reminder. Your employers think you need 250 units yesterday. You have one of the largest outbound migrations in the whole state every single day. 60% of your workforce plus goes outside your city every day. Your sales price and your new unit rents are high. We don't have a whole lot of housing for people to start, right? Like starter homes is a word that you use a lot, starter apartments. And then,
Nathan,
yep,
can I ask a quick question?
yep.
Our outbound workforce, is that outside the 97818 zip code, or is that outside of the city limits?
City limits.
So they could be right here in their hometown, just in the port.
Yeah, that's right. We don't believe it's very many. This mostly is coming from the port and from Tillamook and from Boardman Foods.
Okay.
So we know a huge chunk of them live in Umatilla, Hermiston, Tri-Cities, and some are even going South County.
Sure. Okay.
Then, as a reminder, you all know what you hate, right? Growing too fast, no plan, wall-to-wall buildings, bad products, bad management. You know what that looks like. And then what do you actually want? You have now said this to us about 5 times. The number one most important thing that literally all of you have said to us is pride in where you live, in a shared community vision, right? Right now, we have heard that most folks in your town, in your city, don't feel like there is a shared plan, shared commitment, or shared goal. The housing should build connection, not be divisive. Brenda, you in particular have reminded us many times that one size does not fit all in Boardman. We need folks to be able to access housing at all stages of life, whether they are younger, older, have wealth or not. We hear Carla say all the time, you can't just add housing. You can't just add density. You need to have that housing be part of a larger plan that includes amenities, infrastructure, transportation amenities. Otherwise, you're unbalanced. And then we know that folks have this American dream and that change is here. It's already here. So unless something happens, the change will happen in an uncoordinated way. The change will happen in a way without a plan versus change happening with a plan. I'll do a quick check-in here because again, this is about the third time you've all said this to us. Does this remain correct? Maybe give me a thumbs up, or if I'm missing something, let me know. I don't think I saw a single thumb. Okay, getting closer. Thanks, guys. Thanks for participating. And then you've seen this before, right? How do we respect the culture that's gotten you to be the great city that you all love? How do we value and honor that history? And then also grow tomorrow's leaders, right? So here's again what you've said in your first 3 meetings. Just putting this up so you recognize we can't forget. We have to get started. We have to have places people are proud of. We have to have choice. It can't all just be apartments. There has to be a mix of different styles. We almost certainly need to update our codes and our regulations. Karen, I really love that you said we have to have reasons for women to want to live in Boardman. We have to have for sale here. Here we go. And then this is what you said a little bit about what should you as the housing committee do? You have a war chest. You have more dollars than anyone's had to dedicate towards housing for some time. So we have heard, if you look over on that systems change column, increase clarity, transparency, and speed. Urban Form is one tool to do that. It is not a silver bullet. We would have to do more. You know that Carla is undergoing a deep dive into the code. We are curious about how we do some fast track programs potentially for certain build types. And then we want to do an analysis to see how we compare. How do we compare to other cities that have this challenge? Are we thinking through our fee structure, our SDC structure, right? Again, this is all just a reminder. And then, by the way, over here on the gap financing side, we've had tools before, right? But they didn't quite get us where we wanted to be. So what can we learn from the success of those tools? Do we reinvigorate any of them, change any of them? And how do we educate the folks in our city? Okay, so I'm going to hit escape here. Can everybody still see this if I go into this mode that I can write? Yeah? All right. I want to make sure everybody can see. So when we talk about a master plan, if you remember last time we got together, I showed you some examples of those. And a lot of it looks like a map that says this goes here, or here are options of what could go here. And if you do that, then you also need this type of road, this type of parking, this type of bike. This is where retail can go, right? So it looks like a map, but then that map comes with a set of very detailed objectives and like guidance, right? So let's just pretend we're looking at a city-owned parcel. It would say things like prioritize this type of housing in this density, rebuild the sidewalk to have a better connection to the high school, reduce traffic speeds on this street by doing X, Y, Z. The price points should be in this range because that's what the market can bear at this location. It's that detailed, right? So I took a stab at coming up, and I'll just buzz you ahead here. Goals, objectives, what happens in the different phases, and then what are we actually asking someone to do? I'm going to walk you through all of that. But today, I want your feedback. I took a stab at what would actually go into a master plan. So I took a stab at goals and objectives. I'd like everybody just take, if you haven't read them yet, take the next 30 seconds and read through those. Can you, and let me know if you can't see them and I can blow it up. Okay. So I'd like to open it up for a little bit of conversation. Is this the right overarching goal? Are these the right objectives? What are we missing? What are we not quite getting right? Remember, you are a committee of unusual strength.
I'm a
I
slow
think-
reader.
I think one thing, Nathan, that we have in our Boardman motto, if you will, is small town feel.
Ah,
And I think that in order for us to reach that happy place and still have the sustainable growth mindset, we have to retain that small town feel. So that would be the only thing I could see right off the bat that I'd like to add to the goal.
what do folks think about that?
I think that's important, especially for the people that have lived here for a long time, that have seen the town grow to its point now. Like they still see Boardman as the small, small town feel, even though it's growing into a city. Another thing I would add to that is green space, whether it's minimal, bigger, smaller, you know what I mean, to add to aesthetics.
Yeah.
So
Michael, I think I saw you about to speak.
Yeah, I think you've kind of integrated those concepts in a very general term in preserve culture and history and foster vibrant and inclusive spaces. And when I read this, I think that's where maybe I want a discussion to maybe define that a little better in this. I think the objectives are really good. I think you captured everything, but I think maybe a little definition. And people already started that. Preserve the culture and history. I like the small town feel. That is the culture and history of it. With that, preserve the culture and history. Access. We have a library. You talked about this a little bit. We have schools, we have green spaces in different places around here. How do we make sure that in this plan that they're all accessible? I think, and I think that's under foster vibrant and inclusive spaces. And I'll just say this right now, like the marina is a great space. I love the marina, but I wouldn't say it's accessible to the town, really. Have you ever tried to walk to the marina? I mean, there are places, but it's just not, you have to cross some busy roads. You have to do some things that make it, I would say, inaccessible um, to the group, and so that's that. I just wanted to add that to those for definition, and you want to get those who've lived here longer. If there's anything else that you would say on what does preserve culture and history, and what does vibrant, inclusive spaces mean to you?
Thank you. I'm hearing three things so far, so please comment on any of these three. Small town feel as an objective. Green space, I heard brought up, and I heard the word accessible. So whatever change happens, everybody can access it.
Does anybody have any experience with maintaining that small town feel while accommodating for the growth that Boardman has?
So
I do.
Bobby,
Maybe
Oh.
Nathan, do you?
maybe Nathan.
Brenda, you go first.
Well, I was in a pretty detailed conversation yesterday about what is a small town feel. So what makes you feel like you live in a small town?
Right.
And sometimes it's things that are kind of out of our control, but we could probably be encouraging to them. So things like having things like a little butcher shop, or that it's sort of an antiquated way of uh small businesses that are a little antiquated, like butcher shop,
Yeah, like
for
personally
example.
owned businesses
Personally owned businesses like that.
on a storefront kind
Having
of a feel.
having small businesses. But I think the other thing that makes it a small town is if there's plenty of places for people to walk, lots of green space, lots of trees, and that you have really good paths for walking and biking that are maybe separate, not conjoined, so that you're risking your life to walk on a bicycle walk path, but rather something that allows for people to navigate the town in a variety of ways. So you don't have all of your traffic funneled onto one street, making you look like you're really busy and you have a lot of cars. And it's about having little pockets of town too. That small town feel can have little pockets that are little small parts of the town. So sometimes you go to a town like maybe, I'm thinking of like Pomeroy, or not Pomeroy, excuse me, Waitsburg, Washington. And you've got a little center of town, but then you go to another little section of the town and here's some more little small businesses, little pocket, like almost like a cottage of businesses kind of thing. And so you have
Yeah.
them, dispersed throughout your community. And you have multiple ways to reach the same main thoroughfare, so that you don't have all your traffic going down 2 or 3 streets in your whole town.
That's what I was thinking, being able to have a main street that's beside the traffic that we have that goes down our main street currently.
Right, but that you have alternative ways to get to that main street. You don't have to go just to Wilson, just to Main. That you have a variety of.
So, before I came here to Boardman, I lived in Colorado, in a small town, relatively small town, in between Loveland, Greeley, and Fort Collins. And all three of those cities went through this huge boom. We were there. But in this triangle of these huge cities were all these smaller cities where everybody really wanted to live. And they went through massive growth. And they had the same conversation that we're having now about how do we keep our small town feel, and went through a lot of different iterations. And really what it came down to, and they put some very simple language around being able to have what you need be easily accessible, and whatever that means. And what they ended up actually defining that was you didn't have to get in your car to go to the grocery store necessarily. You didn't have to go, you know, you didn't have to do a complex set of actions to get your needs met. And it really, so they really taught the exact thing, I think, Brenda. So I'm trying to say what you just said, that somebody feel like, if they wanted to go to the library, they knew the path, they knew the way. It was easy. It wasn't a barrier every time that they left their house to get to where they wanted to go. There wasn't this huge street that they had to cross. There wasn't, all these, a huge, I would say, we would call them, what do we call, box stores, right? Plaza, that prevented them, that there were just very natural feeling, human feeling ways to get to where you wanted to go, whatever that was. And, so they came up plans that were amazing, and I liked how it was just all connected. So when they said, okay, we're going to put some housing here, okay, let's get the top 10 things these people will probably want to go do. They want to go to they want to meet together, go see their friends was always came up to number one. So how is a way that they could do that very easily? Where are some meeting spaces? Where are some, where are the green spaces? They wanted, a big one was, they were putting in space that they felt that there were some retirees. They wanted access to medical help, right? And so they had a hospital that was close, but they designed and made sure that there was walking paths and actually an easy way for them to access that medical facility. The big one was they want to go out to eat. Eating and participating was one. And so they said, okay, where are we going to put things, small businesses? What is that going to look like? Another one that they that was really big. Oh, dang it. I'm trying to remember the list in my head. There was another big one that we debated a long time on how that looked was, oh, I can't remember. I don't want to waste people's time, but.
Well, that's okay. Richard chimed in on the chat. I don't know if everybody can see the chat, but he said what Michael's describing is sometimes known as the 15-minute city. So everything you need can be accessed within 15 minutes. Sometimes that's like you have to drive. Like not everybody can, if you have a Home Depot, not everybody can walk to the Home Depot, right? Because but you should be able to walk to the coffee shop, a park, a place to get some minimal groceries or go out to eat or learn.
Or a small hardware store instead of a Home Depot, something that'll meet your immediate small needs.
And Michael, you said, what are those 10 things? So this is a housing committee, right? That's what you are. And so everything that you're recommending is going to be driven by housing. But what I hear you, at least a few of you saying right now is you can't just build housing. There needs to be accessible amenities at a neighborhood scale. So it's not always at a city scale, it's at a neighborhood scale, right?
Build neighborhoods, not subdivisions.
There you go. Can I
Yeah,
quote
oh,
on
that's
that one,
beautiful.
Bobby?
Mhm.
Okay. Build neighborhoods, not subdivisions. I love that. And then, Bobby, you put in things like mixed use zoning. Before you even get to mixed use zoning, it's just a very intentional effort at having mixed use communities, right? That's what I think, Bobby, you mean by neighborhoods instead of subdivisions. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So I'm hearing, thank you, Michael. Thank you, Bobby. Thank you, Richard and Brenda for chiming in on that small town feel. We've heard a little bit about accessible. I haven't heard much about green space yet, other than the pathways. Any comments on that?
Well, I think that every community, whether we end up with some subdivisions or neighborhoods, I'd love to have neighborhoods, but they all need green spaces, some kind of a mixed use playground where it's not just for toddlers and preschoolers and young children, but it also is something that somebody who wants to learn to ride a bike can do, do that there, or somebody who wants to just take a stroll through a nature area. They have something in their neighborhood or very close to their neighborhood, maybe in the next neighborhood. So maybe planning those. And I think this is the other thing. I think Boardman is sitting right at the tipping point of many, many, many things. So we're doing parks master plans, we're doing economic plans, we're doing growth plans and urban growth boundaries, and all kinds of work is happening here that sets us up to be making the best plan across the board. So that we're not making plans in isolation, but we are making them like a net. And I would love to see us be thinking about those things in relation to some of the things that those other packs are putting together.
Solution.
Yeah,
I think whatever we do decide, it'd be smart to have some sort of a green space in there with it. Say it as a neighborhood or whatever. Like the one that's down in Tuscany. It's just a little green patch, but they use it all the time.
Yeah.
yeah.
I want to do a quick check-in before we pop back to Michael. Junior and Karen, it might just be because you've got that mouse over there. I haven't heard from either of you yet. Could I ask either of you to weigh in? You don't have to, but
I told Karen when she was ready to talk to let me know, and I would give her the mic, and she just looked at me as if I was. So all these are great points. I agree with most all of them. The first, keeping the small town feel to me seemed almost difficult at this point. But and the only reason I say that is because we have such a limited access from the north end of the city to the south end of the city with I-84 to be able to traverse that, just like we do going to the Marina Park with only one access that's within the city, the other one goes out. I think we need to have better access to both of those points by foot and by bike or whatever means that we want to do that. I just see working on the TSP is like what Brenda said, getting all these different plans together. The TSP has really shown where we have our handcuffs at for transportation and getting across the I-84 corridor. So that's gonna, I feel that's gonna be our biggest hurdle for the small town feel, is being able to have better access across the interstate.
can I put improved connections? Is that simple enough? Is that
Yeah, I mean, because we're trying to stay off of Main Street. Main Street is the only real access we have across I-84, unless you go all the way down to the Port of Morrow exit, which is a little far for walking and you guys suppose bike path wise, but there's no other collectors coming across to get us back to the center of town at this point. They're in the plan. So, and I have an advantage of being on the TSP board. So I know a lot about where our barriers are for transportation, to make that small town feel without having to have an out and belt line, right? You get to the bigger cities and they all have a belt line, right? And it's a 45-minute drive to get around the whole town, but it's still quicker than going through town sometimes. So I don't want to see us go to that point here, obviously. So trying to come up with some closer crossing of I-84 would be pertinent to that.
yeah. Okay.
I was just thinking about the Laurel Lane exit or the Laurel Lane entrance to the port, and I'm not sure that would really be that safe under the viaduct for the
No,
3-day for foot traffic or even bicycle traffic for that matter. There's just
right.
too
It's
many.
busy. It's busier than Main Street most of the time, or as busy. It's correct.
Yeah.
So having
And only it has
having
semis
a-
on it.
yeah, having a small viaduct that went under at Olson that wasn't for traffic, it was just for foot, for vehicle traffic, just for foot and bicycle traffic would be probably a huge help in that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Remember, anything that has to do with railroads and
ODOT.
highways is expensive and long lead times, but not impossible.
Right.
The earlier you start saying we want X, the sooner it happens on a someday basis. You have to say it, right?
There was a footpath that was supposed to go down through the port behind Portview Apartments by Burnt Fields and down to Tidewater Living. That was included in the big $19 million high, wide, and heavy project, and it was one of the first things that got scrapped, unfortunately, because that would have been, you got to go underneath a high, wide, and heavy rail. It's got to be fairly high. So I think the cost went up exponentially because of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We're going to keep moving, but Ricardo or Karen, anything on this slide so far?
No, I'm good with it.
Yeah,
Okay.
me too. I'm good.
Okay. Michael, sorry, we're going to have to come back to you. Okay.
No, you're fine.
All right. So when we start to think about, well, what do you actually do when you do a master plan like this? Well, the first thing you do is you have to make sure that you're not replicating, right? So what is actually happening, right? The TSP, code revisions, this should never be duplicative. Whatever this committee wants to advance, it should be additive, not duplicative. And so first, what the heck's going on? Like, make sure you've got everybody at the table who's worked on planning in the near past and currently. Then you actually start to say, okay, well, where are the sites that housing could go under current code? And where are the sites that we think housing could go, ought to go, if zoning was changed? Well, in order to do that, you actually have to look. You have to look at all the uses of all the sites in your entire city, right? Not all of them are owned by the city. Some of them are owned by friendly folks. Some of them are owned by less friendly folks. But if you're doing a comprehensive plan, you have to look at everything, right? And it's on a parcel by parcel basis, which I haven't seen in the city of Boardman just yet. Anything that actually looks at it on a parcel by parcel basis with ownership and the economics. But that's really what you want to do. So that's part of your discovery. And then you have to say, well, you can't just build anything anywhere because it would fail economically. You have to actually do a market analysis to see what is the right type of development for the right market conditions. All of your sites are not built equally. And as different infrastructure is built, or different parks, or Brenda's bike paths, which I will now call it forever, these are different things that drive economic development. And so what goes where has to be driven in large part by numbers. It's not just like pretty pictures and we think this park should be here and this type of housing should be here. That's helpful, that's important, but at the end of the day, it has to make financial sense for both public and private sectors to actually go build the things you want them to build, and in what order. I'm going to give you a really quick example. I can't remember if I gave you this example the last time, but I used to work in the city of Burlington, Vermont, which is a smaller city. It's about 10,000 people, which, by the way, made it like the biggest city in Vermont. And we had this site that used to be like a power plant, but it had been empty for 40 years. And everyone in town thought, if we could just solve what's going on with that power plant, all our problems would be over. It would be such a wonderful win for the city, and economic development would cascade off of this wonderful site with all these creative ideas. But what most folks kind of didn't think about was that it's a power plant. There's like giant amounts of infrastructure that are costly, can only be for a power plant, and are mostly polluted. And so it was just a huge financial albatross to turn into any of these great uses. The other thing everybody kind of forgot was it was on the shore of the lake, surrounded on one side by a lake and the other side by a cliff. So there was no positive market forces, especially for the 5 months in Burlington, Vermont, where it's 0 degrees. Nobody wanted to be there. So people had these really wonderful visions for this site, for this really cool opportunity, but were not really considering financial implications of starting there. That needed to be something else. I only tell you this example because you're going to have a lot of ideas. You're going to have a lot of really creative ideas about how to solve your housing challenges in Boardman. And we're going to have to lead and be influenced by financial realities in large part when we get going. So that's that market analysis. The last thing up in that discovery and assessment phase is stakeholder engagement. I've only known you folks for a little bit more than a year, but I know that you have very strong opinions. And I know that all of your neighbors do too. And the first moment someone thinks anyone is doing anything without asking them, the pitchforks come out. I've literally seen it with Karen. I think she's come after me a couple times. So, this is important. As you are starting to do this type of planning work, you have to have on ramps for your stakeholders. You are the housing committee for the city of Boardman. It does not mean you're the only decision makers, right? You're where things are born, you're where things are launched. You are great advocates for the housing that's going to come to Boardman and the plans that will shape it, but it needs to be bigger circles than just this group. Any questions on discovery or an assessment, or what am I missing? What do we need to know before we even begin?
Well, just to piggyback on your scenarios, the power plant, we have the I-84 corridor and the BPA power lines that are gonna, be a big sector that we can't use and need to be cognitive of those restraints. Keep those in the back of our mind.
What else?
I think the core and the railroad tracks are, are also the same types of barriers. And we don't have limitless room to expand because of the bombing range. So feel like we're kind of, if you will, landlocked a bit. We can get longer, but we can't get wider.
Yeah, and all of those barriers seem to go west to east, including the Columbia River. So, I mean, we don't have anything that's a barrier north and south. So, except for the bombing range on the south end.
I'm going to add lead with financial realities here just to really hammer it home. I know that will make my colleague Ryan Olson quite happy. Okay, so then the visioning and conceptualization. If you go back a few slides, there was this sense that there was not a shared vision, that there was not a shared and comprehensive plan. I think some of you sit in seats where it feels like maybe there's starting to be one. I'll point out Karen, Brenda, and Richard again. But the rest of your city doesn't always have the privilege that you do of being in those seats. So they don't know. They don't always know that there is coordination or collaboration happening at the highest levels. So, when we talk about that stakeholder engagement, having that shared vision, that shared goals and objectives is you can't skip that. Richard just put in the chat, and this is part and parcel to that. Maybe decide, like, how big do you really actually want to be? How do you define that, right? I'm going to write that down because I actually think that's on a lot of people's minds. How do you define how big we might someday be? And then, you have to think outside the box with land use and urban design. This is where experts come in, right? We really do. We're not starting from scratch. There are really, really good financial models. There's really, really good urban design models. We have a guy on our team named Gary Reddick. He's a world-class architect and designer. He's a person, and there are many more, that can bring that visioning, that land use and urban design concepts to you. If you say, this is what we think we want, people can take that away and come back and say, well, here's how you would deliver it, right? And then that's got to go along with all of your infrastructure planning. So again, none of this happens in a vacuum. None of this happens in isolation. You have to create a big vision building on the culture, history, and past, and work you're already doing. You have to. The next slide gets pretty busy and starts to talk about actual scope of work on like what is actually in a master plan. Other thoughts or comments on this one so far? Okay. Move to the next one. So again, you are the housing committee. That's why this one's highlighted in blue. But in order to actually have a real estate development master plan that actually says this is what goes where, you're going to have a lot of coordination with the work Carla's already doing on how you change your system. So this is your zoning codes, this is your land use, this is your regulation, right? A lot of this touches money. What's your fee structure? What's your regulatory structure? I would urge you not to have a master plan that is just a series of subdivisions, to use Bobby's word. Like you should be pretty comprehensive about the system in which development happens. And by creating the right guardrails, you can be the keepers of the housing guardrails. That's your job. You're the housing committee. So if you create the right parameters, the right sandbox, so to speak, for anybody that wants to build in your community, you will theoretically achieve your goals and objectives. But that land use and zoning is a pretty big part of it. So a master plan says in very detailed language, change this here, update this here. In order to build this type of housing on this site, you will need to do X, Y, Z. It's that detailed. Does everybody understand what I'm talking about here for bullet point 1? Okay.
I think I understand, Nathan, but I don't know how we're going to reach consensus about some of those things. I'm assuming that there will be the financial side that dictates a good deal of it. And then there'll be those who want to retain that small town feel and don't want 3 and 4 story buildings in town, or who want to make sure that, whatever those things are.
Yeah.
So
It's hard. It's hard.
Okay.
And it all takes a balance, right? So if
Okay.
we go back to the big objectives and goals, which are a community that's accessible to everyone, that's not dominated by a single type of housing, that has attainable prices for different people. And you can say what you don't want, right? You kind of already know. You kind of already know what you don't want. So you can be very specific about that. And then you just have to update the code to enable what you do want. And again, like you're going to be specific. You're going to say, this is the type of housing we think we want. Here's why. The market supports that. The financials support it. It's missing in our community. Okay, well, once you know that, now you know what to go do about your land use and zoning. But you don't really start with land use and zoning. You start with what do you want? And then you update the code to enable what you want. So I would urge you to have consensus first on what you want.
I have a,
it's easier.
sorry, I didn't
Yeah, go
mean
ahead,
to
Richard.
interrupt. I just got a quick question. So, and this may have been asked before, are there any towns, cities, or whatever that are similar to our situation that we know of that are going through the exact same thing, or maybe have already, that we could use it as an example when we talk about, having some balance?
For sure. Yeah, I mean, this is the struggle that almost every city has, right? People are really passionate about their place. Richard, there's 3 types of cities, right? Growing, stagnant, and dying.
And we're growing.
You're growing. So you should go use the cities that are growing that have good examples of doing it right. There's lots of them. There's lots of examples of doing it bad too. You've seen them.
Okay.
But yes, and whenever you get to like actually looking for, okay, who will lead this master planning effort, you're going to ask that question. Okay, well, what examples have you worked on? Show us. Show us how your master plan led to the type of growth that city wanted. Right?
Thank you.
Brenda and Junior and Bobby a little bit, you said a lot about this infrastructure piece, right? Green infrastructure, your roads, your utilities. Right now, it feels like Boardman is a bit disconnected. And what you would build on a go forward basis, you're not exactly sure how it would improve connection. And I would argue that it has to. Whatever you are planning, whatever is in this real estate development master plan has to include this high level design and plan for connection. Full stop. Otherwise, you're, I think it's more subdivision-y than you want, right?
Yeah, and that's my concern. And, you know, every town has the old town and the new town. And, you know, Boardman's old town would be kind of north of the freeway, and the new town is south of the freeway. And the north side is, as all old towns are, they're highly restrictive as to where you can go forward. And that's why it went to the new town that's south of the freeway. But unfortunately, it's going to have some restrictions as well. So, and as far as going up higher than we are right now, we are limited with code enforcement now, because the only reason we can go 3 high right now is because the fire department got a new ladder truck that allowed the motels to go that high. So I don't think you'll see anything higher than what we already have without some major obstacles being taken out.
So on that note, and then Brenda, back to your comment on like, how are we going to get anyone to agree on land use and zoning? Honestly, these might be out of order. This urban design part probably happens before land use and zoning. This is probably the piece that everybody needs to agree on first. And then you actually go and you build your land use and zoning code to enable it. But this is where you start to say things like, well, our maximum density is X. Our maximum height is Y. We really hate this type of housing. Can we please not have it? Right? That's where you start to say things like that. And you might get pushback, and that's expected, and there'll be compromise. But if this group really agrees on a set of urban design principles around housing, then this group essentially sells it to council, and then that council goes and sells it to the city, right? That's kind of how it works. So sorry, I just reordered those so that that's up there. That infrastructure and transportation and economic development, this is, you know, this is where you actually have sort of the backbone to build the type of housing you want. And some of that backbone is your small businesses that you were talking about, right? Your owner occupied businesses. And so where do those go? And if those are going in sort of newer places for you, then you have to make sure you've got the right parking, you've got the right turnarounds for fire trucks, you've got the right road widths, you know, those connections that you were pointing out. And then the big blue one there, right? So this is in some ways the most important for this committee. What goes where? What goes where? And what do you actually want? And how do we use best practices and financial realities to actually stage that? You know, so it's not just what goes where, but like, where do we start? Where do we begin versus where do we end? You know, you generally don't do your biggest, most expensive, riskiest thing first, because if it fails, you're never going to get a second shot. So you do a lot of small things to prove progress and gain confidence and trust. And one of the ways that you can start a little faster is you can look at the sites that the city owns and the sites that friendly owners control. So maybe that's Good Shepherd, right? Maybe that's the sites that you guys have been securing or have long had. I'm going to pause and see what you guys think so far before we get to that innovation piece down at the bottom and the actual implementation plan. How's this striking you as like a scope of work for an actual real estate development master plan?
Daunting.
You guys look up for the task. I see Karen maybe wants to talk to the whole group. It's hard to tell.
Turn it on. Fun.
Everything takes time. And this is something that I think if we lay it out right, structure it right, we just take it a step at a time. Every day we move forward a little bit more with it. It'll work.
I think we also need to understand that, and it's been brought up, that not everybody's going to be pro for this. And I mean, we can try and make everybody happy, but it's not going to happen.
Sorry. Karen, did you want to go?
Only thing I was just gonna say to my cohort in the building is that, there's a lot of planning about roundabouts and stuff off of the freeway, which will definitely change the look of the community. Because some of the planning, like down on the port area, they were planning on walking paths, how to get walking paths under there and all that. So this just seems to me to be a monumental deal, because it's not just about housing. It's about that master plan of figuring out what everything else is involved in your community. And transportation is a big deal in Boardman. We're starting to build a few side streets, but we aren't building anything that would go north and south. Everything goes east and west. So, anyway.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It's I like that you used the word daunting. I put it in the notes. If you lead with housing, because that's what this committee does, I think that makes sense, because at the end of the day, housing is home, right? It's the foundational element for all of your neighbors and community members. But then in order to facilitate the creation of housing, you kind of have to look at everything else. You can't do housing by itself. Other comments, and then I'm going to bring us home, because we got about
Well,
7
I guess that parks are gonna get to be a really issue in Boardman too, as we're progressing here, because like you say, the more housing we build and more designing of the city that the city has in mind are using up our park that we already have. So if you're gonna start using up the city park space with something that's already been on the front street, where are you gonna get that space? You can't have one lot that might end up to be like 500 square feet either, by the way. So
Right.
I'll be quiet now.
This is what we need. This is what we need. So I want to talk about next steps. So if Brandon was here, he would remind you that you are the body that recommends things to city council. And without city council, you can't actually spend dollars from your housing fund. So in order to launch a master plan exercise, you would actually need the city council to allocate some number of dollars or an up to amount to actually move forward with a real estate development master plan. I think there are two things that this committee should care about the most at this phase of the process. The first is, I don't think the city should pay for all of this. I think if you have other stakeholders at your table, they become invested in your shared vision. Go back, you said one of the things you're not sure you have is a shared goal or vision for the community among stakeholders. I think this is an opportunity to make that happen. But one of the ways that folks really get excited about something like this and the way they show up is if they have skin in the game. So I would urge this committee to say to city council, we would like to do a housing-driven real estate development master plan for the city of Boardman. And we think we should use some housing fund dollars to start, but those should be match dollars. We should go raise additional capital from other sources, whether they are your large employers, philanthropy, the state, other government, quasi-government entities. The city can be the lion's share. The city could be half the money. But you should use that as a leverage point to go raise additional capital. That's important because number one, it helps preserve your limited funding. And number two, it makes all of those other stakeholders have very real skin in the game. So that's big principle number one. I'd like to pause there and see what you all think about that.
In your experience, what is the cost of having a development plan put together for a small to mid-town?
In my deep past, it was around 100 grand. I would imagine inflation has made that go up. But I think that's a nice round number that you could start with.
I apologize for missing. What's the round number? What's it for?
Oh, Junior just said, how much does this thing cost?
Bob,
Bobby
No?
Jr.
Oh, sorry, Bobby said that. Sorry.
That's a compliment.
for both of us.
Yeah.
And the real answer is I don't know. But in the past, I've done work like this for around 100 grand. You can flex up or down 20%, but it's around there. We might get bids back that are like 200, and then you can be like, Nate, you were way off. But it's about that. And so, Brenda, the first thing I'd like all of you to think about is if you take this as a request to City Council to use some portion of the housing fund to kickstart this effort, I would recommend that you say to City Council, we want to match whatever dollars the housing fund puts in from other sources. So if the housing fund is half the cost, we're going to go raise the other half from other stakeholders so that they, number one, have skin in the game, and number two, you're just using less of your limited resource. That's what I'm asking you all. Oh, Karen.
So how long would you have this proposal out there? Because how long are we gonna wait for a bite? If we have money that we could be using?
Oh, I think, so once you would actually put a real scope of work on the street, I wouldn't keep it out there more than a month. You know, I think you would choose your team. You would choose your team in, you know, a month to 6 weeks.
So if I said to people, okay, I think that we have 100,000 here that we're willing to put up, and we're hoping to match that. Is that one developer or 3 developers?
Yeah, so it's not a developer, and I think you would put up 50 grand is what I think you'd put up. And then you'd try to raise the other 50. If we're calling the whole budget 100-ish. We don't really know what it is yet, but let's just pretend it's 100 because that's a nice round number. So the city might
Okay,
put up 50.
Okay, I can see we could probably raise 50,000 maybe. You know what I'm saying? But in our particular case, all of the industries in the port, their cost of doing business is come up substantially.
Mhm.
So the money that they would have had to have done a little extra something is probably used up right now.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean it's gonna be used up 4 years from now. So that was my question about how long would I offer this deal until the city just says, you know, I can't wait for a match. I'm gonna do this.
That's a good question. I think that's kind of up to you guys. Right? So if you say, look, we're going to go hunt for match for a month or 6 weeks, and if we don't find the matches, then fine, the city will cover the whole deal or a lot more. So be it. But that's kind of your choice to make.
So would we be pennies ahead, dollars ahead, if we actually didn't offer our side of what we would match and just say, whatever you guys can come up with, we will match?
You could, but it costs what it costs, right? So if you if the community at large comes up with 30 grand and then you say, great, we'll match that with 30 grand, but it costs 100.
Still
It's not
only have
gonna do-
60,000.
You're not going to do the project, right? So I'm not asking you to solve this problem. I'm advising that you bring that type of a scenario to city council because I think there's value in you trying to raise additional capital that is not your own for this effort. It might result in 20 grand total. Well, that's 20 grand the city didn't have to spend. And you got some good stakeholders to sit at that table with you. That's worth it.
And so the thing that we're creating, or the thing that we're attempting to fundraise to purchase, is the master plan that
Correct.
has urban design, land use and zoning, infrastructure, transportation, economic development, all those things built into it.
Correct. And remember, not all of it's from scratch. You have transportation stuff ongoing. You have a zoning, a comprehensive rewrite of your zoning code being contemplated right now. Like, not all of it is starting from scratch. You're going to port some of this into it.
And we have I think the building fund, so the building department is paying for a available lands inventory program.
Right.
So
as you build the scope of work, there are other things already happening and being paid for. You would just drag those in.
Seems like there's quite a few grants available for it too.
Love that, Bobby. Love that. And remember, you hired us to help you go find stuff like this. So it's not like it's just all on an already overloaded Brandon or Carla. That's partly our job. So I would say there's two big questions on the table. Do you want to do this? You're not committing to doing this yet. You're just starting the process of talking to city council. Do you want to undergo this effort, which I believe I wrote down, it's daunting. And then number two, do you want to propose to city council that the fund would for starters pay for half of this thing, and we'll try to raise the other half from other sources? Those are kind of the two big questions on the table.
I think this seems to be pretty important.
Yeah, I'd
It's
say
definitely worth the conversation.
Yeah.
it goes back to the original statement. Change is going to happen with or without us. And so, yeah, it seems daunting but there's, getting somebody to come in and do a master plan, I think is yes. Do we want to go out and find grants and offset costs so it doesn't all fall on the city, I would also say yes. There's available ways to do that. Now, how much does that look like and everything? I don't know. There's work that needs to be done to finalize that, but yes and yes for me.
I'm a yes to both.
I'm to both as well.
I'm a yes as well.
Karen?
Karen and Brenda and Richard, you get to decide twice.
Karen, do you have a different thought?
No, I don't have any thoughts.
No, I'm good with that plan.
Okay. Well, then I'll go back to Brandon, Karen, Brenda, and Richard. What I'll try to do is write this up in a way that just makes sense from the housing committee. I'll run it probably by all of you via email. And if it looks good, we're going to keep it simple, super simple. We don't have to have details fleshed out yet. We're going to keep it super high level and simple. I'll run it by everybody on this committee. I'll run it by Brandon. And if everybody gives a thumbs up, then probably at the September council meeting, this committee would make that exact recommendation we just said, right? We think this is worth doing, and we think it's worth trying to go fundraise for it to offset the costs to the city. That's what would be coming before your council in September, or a flavor of that. Again, you'll all get a chance to weigh in on my words and I'll wordsmith it. But that's what we would take to your council in September to just get started. Don't have to have all the details figured out yet. That can come later. But to respect your city's process, this is how it's supposed to work. This committee talks about it, makes a launch, makes a start that goes to your city council, and then your city council says, yes, no, we need more info. Maybe Karen, Brenda, and Richard can tell you about that process. But that's what we'll try to do. Okay.
So Nathan, I do have a question.
Mhm.
Let's say that the city council takes the suggestion from the committee and they say, yep. How soon can we start? Because that's the 1st of September. I don't know when we have our next meeting, but
Well, our next meeting is around this time in September,
Okay.
so it's not far after your council meeting.
okay.
And then we would finalize a scope of work in that meeting, so that we can actually then start to fundraise with that scope of work. And see you, Michael. And then put it on the street once we get everybody on this committee to give it a thumbs up.
Okay.
Yeah. No time like the present.
Okay.
Good job, everybody. Yeah,
Thank you.
good work. Okay, we're gonna close there today. Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it. Have an awesome rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
See ya.